All right, continuing with assignment 5. It is due today. We want to make sure we get something submitted for it. There are 3 requirements for it. One is that you have a sketch for your spot illustration. One is that you have clean vector line art posted for your spot illustration. And the third requirement is what we're working on now, which is a full color version of it floating as a PNG. So I have those requirements up on the whiteboard. So far, as I've demoed, I have posted, it's nice to have a lot. I have posted the first 2 requirements, right? The sketch and the clean line art. You do not need to post inspiration, but sometimes it can be very helpful. And I definitely recommend you have inspiration, especially coloring inspiration. And I am going, this is a modernist monster project, right? So I'm going for Art Deco, kind of humanoid Nighthawk here as a mascot of our school. So what have we done so far in the class? We, or I, in demoing, have chosen flat colors. And those flat colors have been based on color references that we brought into Photoshop. Our line art is floating on the top of everything. It is a vector. It is our EPS file from Adobe Illustrator. And that's the black bread, the top of the sandwich. At the bottom, I have white bread locked as a fill. But very quickly, as you're building your flat color, you'll realize the white background can make your flat color selection seem really dark. So I like to add a few other slices of bread on the bottom. Or if you like, you could call them peanut butter and jelly. But I add a gray fill layer. That helps me see my color selections a little bit more clearly. And a black, just so I can get, by the end of coloring this spot illustration, full versatility that it can work on any kind of background. So let's keep it on the gray. All of these are locked, but even though they're locked, they can be turned on and off. The only layer that is not locked is the one I want to work on, and that is going to be my Duotone highlights layer. So how do I get to Duotone highlights? Well, first I'm going to label it Duotone highlights. That's where we left off. How I got there is I duplicated my flat local color, Command J. Then I went to image adjustments and I used levels, and I used levels to brighten them. That is basically adding white into all of your colors. And that's a good example. As long as you don't go too far where you get to pure white, that is a good example of a highlight version of your local color. But if I just left it there, that's not duotone, that's just lighter local color. So now I'm doing what's called hard edge duotone. So I use my lasso tool to cut out where I think the shadows should be. Anything I delete from my duotone highlights layer is going to show the flat color underneath, which is darker, which will look like a shadow, like that. Now I've done that already, but I'm just not finished. So I've been cutting away. You can see all these shapes cut away. This is where your stylus can be helpful. And I'm cutting away from the only layer that's unlocked. This is my duotone highlights layer. Right. So let's see, where else can I cut away? So it seems like on the underside of this, and you can always work behind your line art, right, for your selections. Probably under here, I'm scalloping, which means I'm connecting with curves. And just because I want all of you to do duotone hard edge somewhere in your image, you don't need to do it everywhere. You can use your own judgment. So when it comes to a texture like this, it's interesting. I might do like just an overall cutout like this, like a cast shadow, because this is a flap covering this. But if I want the texture to really come out, I can also do cast shadows underneath these feathers and kind of scallop them. You see I'm drawing underneath the line art. And then if I decide, okay, I want to now scallop this, I just take chunks away from the highlights as I go. In ways that I think are effective. And usually curves work well. I mean, it works particularly well with this Art Deco inspiration, but whatever you're going for. When in doubt, curve it out. So there are a few illustration tricks for coloring besides using scallop shapes for your shadows instead of all straight lines. The other is to darken towards the V. So if you see a V in your line art, especially where edges are coming together, this is definitely a place you want to have darker color. As things come close together into V's, that's a good place. Like at this ankle, that's a good place for some shadow. Probably across the whole top of this foot. Now this is showing you how to do it without scalloping, which is perfectly acceptable, right? But it makes the foot look pretty flat, which maybe is good, I don't know. So let's try scalloping it on this side, where I connect with little scooped circles, and delete. That's going to look a little bit more dimensional. So if I start doing that here, I can always cut more away. Now I'm scalloping it. And it'll look a little bit more dimensional. And I'm going to scallop it here. And just like when we were digital inking, and we were using the rotate to get better angles on our inking, you can also use the rotate as you're cutting away from your coloring. So the rotate is underneath the hand tool in Photoshop. It's called the rotate view. And so for scalloping, this might be an easier angle. Go back to the lasso. My lasso has a 0 pixel feather. This is because this is hard edge duotone. And I want it to be incredibly sharp and hard edged. After that, I'll show you soft edge duotone. And we don't have to repeat all this work. It's because in computers, with digital art, it's far, far easier to soften an edge than it is to sharpen an edge. So we're going to let the computer soften our hard edges to give us that option. All right. Now the sword, the gauntlets. Now when your highlight colors and your flat colors are already really light, like these two colors are different, but the projector doesn't even kind of show it. That duotone can be really subtle. And there's nothing wrong with that. Subtle is fine. Now is there anywhere that I want duotone that I don't have it? Okay, a little bit more on the scabbard here. Even on this straight scabbard, I think scalloping can be effective. And again, I follow it around the black line art. It takes practice for sure, but that will get the job done. And then to straighten it out, you just double click on that rotate tool. I'll take it out of full screen just so you can see all the tools and the layout of the layers more clearly. And let me give myself a little bit more space with these layers, because this sandwich is really simple right now. It's just got 2 toppings between the slices of bread, but it's going to get more complicated as I show you these different options. Okay. So if I'm really, really picky, I could go in and I could cut out the underside of all of these different little pieces of thread. And it's so subtle, it probably doesn't even show on the projector too well. But really, you just want to do the duotone changes where you think they're most effective. Maybe one to, if you have a shadow already built into your line art, like this little seam, that's a good place for a shadow. I want to be really fancy, I can do a little drop shadow behind this string. But I think it's getting to be a little too much. So it's entirely possible to overdo it. Yeah, and I already got rid of that. All right, so now that's my duotone coloring. And maybe there's some places where it doesn't feel like it's enough because it's just highlights on top of my local color. And my local color is the stand-in now for the shadows. So I'm going to do another step. I'm going to lock those duotone highlights, and I'm going to go back to my flat color, and I'm going to duplicate it again, Command J. And this time I'm going to relabel it Duotone Shadows. Because usually the most effective duotone coloring is where the shadows are darker than the local flat color and the highlights are lighter than the local flat color. So now with the duotone shadows, I don't need to cut out any shapes. All I need to do is go to Image Adjustment and darken those flat colors. So go to Levels, and this time I'm adding black to them. And it will deepen that contrast. Right? Okay, now you can see that difference. So I'm not going to unlock it yet, or lock it yet, because now this gives me an opportunity to work between a darker shadow and a brighter highlight. So let's say on the wing where I think there might need to be a little bit more texture. What can I do? I can do this. I can do a secondary kind of scalloping. And that now shows the local color coming through, shadow color and highlight color. So duotone doesn't mean 2. Duotone means split into light and dark. So I can do this with hard edges in as many steps as I want between the lightest color blue and the darkest color blue on the wing. So now I'm cutting out from that darker shadow and revealing kind of a middle tone, which is my local color. And I don't know that I need that everywhere. I probably don't, right? But in places where I think I could use a little bit more texture,